Hello, I'm Quinn, and this is Not Bonsai. And here we're going to grow what we want, how we want to, and we're going to follow some of the rules, and we're going to ignore most of the others because we probably don't know them. And today, we'll be working on my Echeveria, which you probably can't see, but the gentleman I bought it from, who was in Lederhosen, very interesting guy, actually labeled it for me. No, that's fine. He sold me a very nice plant at a very reasonable price. This was, I believe, $10, and by far the largest Echeveria I've ever seen. It was probably, well, out of frame here, just a few inches, and last year in spring I chopped it and got a bunch of cuttings, which you'll see all around here, and I have different ideas for kind of both sets you see. On this bigger one, what I'd like to do, and the process has begun, is to chop it again once it's nice and healthy. We won't be doing that today, to hopefully get even more ramification. And eventually I'd like kind of like little bouquets or pads, if you will, of these beautiful purplish, pinkish, light green, powdery Perle von Nurnbergs. Forgive pronunciation. I typically will never get that right. I believe as long as you know what plant you're working with, you can get an idea of where it comes from, what it likes, and how best to care for it. So we won't be getting very technical on this channel because I just want to have fun. Excuse me. And then over here we have some of the cuttings, which I took from the top. This gentleman originally, his plan for the plant, he had it growing in just a square kind of plastic nursery pot, but laying sideways. So he was growing it out long, if you will, and it had some decent movement, which you can kind of see here. But that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do with it, nor do I have the space. That's integral to how I got into this and kind of how I continue it. I live in a one-bedroom basement apartment with my daughter and mother, so space is limited. I have 3 windows, which is nice, and a number of LED grow lights, but each window is just cram-packed with plants, and I continue to buy more. I bought 2 more little plants today. But the key here is space for me. So that's kind of how I got into some of the bonsai techniques in keeping the root system small yet functional. And, I can reduce the size of all my pots, hopefully, and have more space for the limited amount of light I do get. So over here, with these cuttings, what I'd like to do, as you could probably see, is I'd like them to come cascading out of the pot and then also ramify. So today I have a little, I don't know how to pronounce it, starts with an A, succulent, and I believe I'll just be swapping these 2 out. So nothing major there, but I didn't have this one growing, I believe, when I started this one. I'm not sure exactly why I didn't originally do that. I would like this container to be all Perle von Nurnberg, and hopefully cascading out and ramifying and just being covered eventually in heads, tops, flower, if you will. So let me clear a little space here in my limited work area, and we'll get to work on the roots. Had to find my little handy root hook here. This was a shish kebab thing, barbecue skewer that I just bent very easily. And I like it. It's very thin. Allows me to feel like I'm not really breaking many of the roots. And it was essentially free. I just found it laying around. So, let's see if we can't get this guy out of the pot. What I try to do with most of my succulents, jades, portulacariophras, things of that nature, is to water them real well, and then pretty much as soon as you think they've thoroughly dried out, which there's many ways to tell. Typically, how heavy your pot is is kind of the best way. If it's, you know, you can feel it when you've watered it. And then you'll get an idea of kind of what pots weigh what. And if you don't have 100 plants, this would probably be much easier for you to remember. So, I'm hoping, because of the nature of this soil, I'm hoping the sandiness and the husks, that it'll just kind of fall away from my roots, but we shall see. I am prepared to basically grow this from a cutting if I have to. Like I said, I can dedicate a good grow light to it. I don't feel like succulents need much dormancy in particular. From my experience, they seem to be opportunistic, if you will. When the sun is shining and the conditions are well, they grow. When the conditions aren't so well, they don't. And like I said, these are just so resilient that I'm not overly concerned we'll have issues repotting at this time of year. Though I definitely would not suggest it, especially on one of your favorite plants, as this is for me. Most of my other things, like I said, are babies that are just kind of growing. But this one's more in kind of what you would call the development phase. So it's rather exciting to kind of start to see your idea come to life. Okay, so it feels pretty dry and loose. Okay, so basically it looks like it's mostly just come out from my previous slip potting, but that's okay. We'll see what we can't work with here. Okay, so far it seems pretty crumbly. Now, does that mean I'll be losing roots as well? I'm also rather interested to see how far this stem goes down. Yeah, it's just so crusty in here. I just feel like there was no way that any water was really getting through to it. I feel like it's almost just been living off humidity. As you can see, it's growing these aerial roots, and I can't figure those things out. So if anybody has any ideas, let me know, because it seems like those would kind of pop up after I watered it. But could be related to humidity. So, like I said, I'm not too thoroughly educated on these things. I just typically will buy a plant I like and go home and try to learn what I can about it, where it naturally comes from, what it might like. But from my experience, it's more, at least initially when you get it from the nursery, what conditions was it in the nursery? Was it getting a lot of light there? Has it been raised on a lot of light? You know, these plants do adapt. So I've definitely had situations where I brought a plant home and exposed it to what I thought was the appropriate amount of full light according to, you know, what I knew about caring for this or what I could find out on Google or YouTube. And then it just didn't do well. Like I have some banana plants currently, some dwarf banana plants. And the internet tells you to give them full light and full sun, but when I bought them from the nursery, they were in a rather shady spot. So, and I don't know how long they had been there, but I have to assume that they'd adapted a bit to that shadiness. And then I feel like when I brought them home and exposed them to more light, they just didn't react very well. Watering is kind of the same thing. A lot of times these nurseries, they'll just water everything once a week or whatever their little system is. And that in itself can cause some issues because, you know, from my experience, plants want water when they're growing, when they're getting light, you know, when the soil dries out. It's all very dependent upon your plant's particular situation. See, this is getting to kind of be what I was worried about, is this is just an absolute brick. And like I said, you do want the roots to be very, very dry when you work on them, because a broken succulent root exposed to water is just very, very likely to experience some rotting. And that's going to be about the fastest way you're going to ever kill any of those things I mentioned earlier. Succulents, jades, portulacaria aphras. These are all very drought or, you know, light water tolerant, if you will. Because they hold their moisture, as I'm sure you know, in their leaves and such. So less is more when it comes to water with these guys. Yeah, it's just absolutely a brick down here. This is probably going to take me some time to whittle away. Like I said, I don't want to break some of these roots, which I am finding, like there's a rather healthy looking root that I'd like to keep. And there's roots all through here, which is great, but I'm just going to have to slowly, and it's all kind of root bound around itself. So, I've got some work to do. Alright, well, as you can see here, some progress was made, and we had some technical difficulties. In the first video, I was going to just switch out my two little cascading guys here, which I did, but for some reason can't upload the file. So, we'll just have to give you a finished product. This would be the, I believe it's aeonium that I took out of the large pot. You can see it's got some cool roots here that have hardened off. I had those under the rock like I had mentioned. I think they'll be just fine here, so that's a cool little guy for now. I just kind of tossed him in there to give him a home, since the real goal here was my assistant Maya. She helps me out here. So my real goal was to get this cascading guy his friend, who will now also cascade. Hopefully give it some nice proportions and fill out. And I do have a number of cuttings up here just waiting to grow up a bit. Okay, we'll set this guy back here. Now, on to my big guy, which I'm excited about. I thought I had done that other video first. But here we are. We can see I made it through the root raking process safely, and we got a good bit of roots. I was pretty concerned we were going to have to just grow this as a cutting, but no, we've saved a good bit of the roots here. Now I am rather confident he will do quite well. And I was looking here, my new pot that I got today on sale, $6. Nice little thing. I think our Echeveria here will fit splendidly. Got my little, it's a chopstick or maybe crochet thing, not really sure. Found it at the thrift store, but I like to use it for poking. Nearly everything I own was purchased at the thrift store. I often go looking for bonsai pots, which you can find a lot of the time. Granted, they will be typically production factory type pots, but you get them for $1 or $2, and they're great for succulents, little things of that nature. Or just training your plants. Or if you're like me and you don't really care if it's a fancy pot, as long as it looks relatively nice and holds your plant safely. Most of the time I'm picking a pot based on root size. So just what would be best for my current root spread. In this case, I think this pot will work wonderfully for it. It's got room to grow, but not so much that I think the soil will remain wet. So let's see. This is nice. Maybe I can get a good angle here. Okay. I think that looks nice enough. I'll fill it in with some of my soil, which is just a combination of little lava rock, perlite, and pumice. Probably put a little orchid bark. I have some small orchid bark vines. I'll place those on top. Or I have a little decorative type rock. It's just a very fine gravel. And I've been enjoying kind of placing that on the top just to kind of help settle all this bigger stuff down, fill in a little of the gaps in the top of the soil, just to keep it from drying out, because your top's always going to dry out, obviously faster, being exposed to the elements, drafts and things of that nature. Wind is a big one. That'll dry your plants out real fast. I'll give it a little pat here. Try to keep I like to try to keep my soil level below the line, because just indoors it just makes it a little easier to water. There's a big root. We'll cover him up. Here's my little poker here. Try to get some of this soil in between all the roots, but there's definitely going to be some air spaces with this one, I'm thinking, because this soil is just big and loose. That's fine for your succulents. Alright, seems like wasn't much rootage to work with in there. Not that we'd really have to work soil in between. Now, I have some large rocks. I will place those around the trunk. This one's kind of nice. It's like a little heart-shaped rock, which the trunk will fit right in there. Give it some extra good support, I feel like. And then it's a little wobbly. It's going to be. I don't want to trim it. So I feel like it'll be fine. If it needs to drop a leaf or two, during the transition rooting process, it'll do that. I don't feel like I need to cut it down to reduce the vigor or anything of that nature. These plants, they do know what they're doing. I want to leave that up top, give it a chance to regrow roots. Like I said, I feel like I could have grown this from a cutting, no problem. So I think it'll do just fine. So, and here we are, our finished Echeveria, which I believe I'm going to name Lederhosen, so that we remember the interesting fellow we got it from. There it is in its new home for a little while, propped up with its rocks, ready to re-root and be trimmed this spring. Then our little Aeonium next door there, looking kind of cool in his cascade pot. I'm sure that definitely won't be his forever home, but he can live there and grow a little more now. He'll be fine till at least spring. Thank you for joining me today. I'll get everybody back in the frame here. And we will be updating you on this guy's progress once we're going to do the cuts, which, all going well, hopefully will be right before spring. I feel like we got another 2.5, 3 months until, you know, it's nice and safe for some of our warmer plants to go outside. And when the sun's really shining here as much as it does in North Seattle, we'll chop the tops, like I said, try to get some more ramification, and then hopefully we have an excellent looking Echeveria in the future. Well, thank you very much for joining me. We'll see you again.